let's start with stratification. So last class we saw yes, I'll dictate this. Means आज वाला जो question है वो discuss करेंगे. So in last class we were talking about theories of stratification. Functionalist theory we have seen, Marxist perspective we have seen. Now we'll be talking about Weberian perspective or theory of Max Weber. Okay, so he says that stratification, or actually he was a bit influenced by Karl Marx, but he did not, on face of it, accepted the entire theory of Karl Marx related to social stratification that is completely based on production, the ownership of means of production. Instead, he suggested that stratification depends on, or there are three bases of stratification, not just one that is economic ownership, but three bases. And you can remember it in the code word PPP: paisa, power, and prestige. So class, status, and power. These are the three bases of stratification. Okay, not just one, but all the three cumulatively act together to decide a person's position in the society. Not only economy, not only status, not only political power, but all the three combined. So what is class? So he says class is the economic position of a person in a society. Whatever the economic position, and that economic position can be by birth. That is, he might inherit the wealth, or can be achieved also. So he might gain, or he might make a startup and earn a lot of money. Okay. Next, he also says that this cannot be the sole mechanism for stratification or sole determinant of the stratification, because in industrialization or industrialized society, the CEOs or the directors or the managers, they are also the laborers. वो भी laborers हैं, okay, compared to the owner. But they are, just remember that the capital class will decompose, the labor class will decompose, the Derrida idea. So आप clearly उनको distinguish नहीं कर सकते. You cannot clearly distinguish that whether they are capitalist or the labor class. Okay, so one, that is the class, economic position. Second is the status, that refers to the prestige or social honor that a person possesses. That social honor might be because of religion, that might be because of caste, that might be because of degree that you have, or that might be because of some kind of title or award that government has given you. Maybe you are Padma Shri or Bharat Ratna or maybe Ashok Chakra or something like this. So that is the prestige or the social honor, the respect that you gain from the society, maybe because of your act, maybe because of some kind of ascriptive identities, maybe caste, okay, or maybe religion. Anything can happen. And the third is the power. So we have discussed what Max Weber talks about power. He suggested that power is the capability of a person to execute his will or to enforce his will irrespective of the resistance. So this is what is power, and these three cumulatively will decide the position of a person in the social strata. Okay, so these are the three factors rather than only this. So that's why he suggests that there will never be a polarization of people or polarization of classes in the society, as what Marx suggested, polarization, that is the bourgeois class and the proletariat. ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा. In fact, he suggested that there will be four classes. So these four classes are the bourgeois class. Then the second one, the white collared people, that is managers, directors or general managers, these kind of positions. They are not the owners of the company, but owning having a very high position. Not then the third will be petty bourgeois. What does this mean, petty bourgeois? That is small vendors, means किसी ने grocery shop खोल दी और कुछ छोटे-मोटे दुकानदार जिसको हो गया. So they are also the owners of means of production. They are owning their own business, but not as the ones like owners of industries or something like that. So these are petty bourgeois. And the last one, that is the manual workers. Okay, so this is the Weberian, or what is called as the Trinitarian model of stratification. Trinitarian, as you can understand, that there are three bases of stratification: class, status, and power. And this is one of the most effective method of stratification, one that is currently used also. In fact, आप जो Mandal Commission है, the report of Mandal Commission, although not directly mentioned because it's not a sociological report, but has been clear-cut influence of Weberian perspective. So if you see the criteria of Mandal Commission for identifying a caste as OBC, you will find that these three criteria specifically have been taken into consideration: the economic position of a community, then the social position of a community definitely has to be in the local hierarchy. It should be a lower ranked caste should be there. So economic भी होना चाहिए, जिसके basis पे creamy and non-creamy idea came, right? And then you will not find a Brahmin to be an OBC. So definitely the OBCs will be from two communities, two Varnas, Vaishya or Shudra. Okay, they were the one who were declared OBCs. Then power. So they should be the one whose representation in the bureaucracy, in the administration, government jobs should be relatively lower than a certain percentage. So ये तीनों के तीनों criteria were used in Mandal Commission also to identify who will be the OBC. In fact, a scholar, Indian scholar, Andhra Bete, he is the professor emeritus in Delhi School of Economics, who basically has done, or who has contributed much to Indian anthropology and Indian sociology. So he conducted a study in a village in Tamil Nadu, Sripuram, in Tanjore district of Tamil Nadu. So he was clearly influenced by this Trinitarian model of stratification that was given by Weber. We'll be reading this Sripuram study in paper 2. So here, this village study that was done. So he suggested that initially the society was symmetrical, or the hierarchy was symmetrical. What does this symmetry means? That is, high caste is equal to high class is equal to high power. सब कुछ एक ही के पास था. कास्ट में भी ऊपर होगा, ब्राह्मण ही टॉप पे रहेगा, and he will also be owning much of the land and also will be powerful in the local hierarchy. So symmetry was there. Okay, but post independence, or you can say since middle of British rule, the British policy actually started to change this symmetry, or started to distort this symmetry. How? Basically, what happened कि post independence that is land reform movement started first. Okay, in which the land was redistributed, tenants को मिला. Then what happened? Green revolution started. So green revolution, several middle class or agricultural class, they started to earn a lot of money. They made a lot of wealth. And then third one, that is democratization of polity happened. So here it was not by caste you will get the position or by education, but by numbers. So here caste became the factor for mobilizing the people, due to which the stratification started changing abruptly, because economic wealth started to be redistributed. Middle class, peasant caste, जैसे हरियाणा में जाट्स, they started getting power because numbers was there. Numbers was there, so they actually were able to make the government. Money was also there because they, due to green revolution. Okay, so this something that was concentrated in the hands of high caste was actually now redistributed, and due to which they started to distort or change their position in the hierarchy. So this idea is what is called as the dominant caste idea that was given by M. Srinivas. Okay, so these castes who were not ritually at higher ranks, not Brahmins or Kshatriya, but started to gain higher ranks in the local hierarchy. So Jats, Reddis, Kurmis, Ahir, Bhumiyar, all these communities, all these castes in Bihar, UP, Haryana, Rajasthan, and in South also, Patidars, they started changing their position in the local hierarchy. And this can be easily explained by this Trinitarian model, wherein the symmetry was disturbed and the new form of asymmetrical arrangement happened. So high caste was not high class, not highly powerful. The power and class started to redistribute among other caste members. Is it clear? आना कुछ तो बोलो यार. Just write Max Weber. Post. बिल्कुल impact था. This mobilization due to caste started by positive discrimination policies or positive discrimination, the reservation of backward classes को जो advantage दिया गया था, and Pune Pact and all that stuff that happened. So definitely backward class को जब reservation वाली policy सबसे पहले Britishers ने शुरू की थी, and that created caste associations. Several caste associations were created, and that they were using caste identity to mobilize the people. So the fertile ground was already set before independence for caste-based democracy. And let me tell you that this something we say that caste kabhi caste should be eliminated, caste should go away and all that stuff, but it never went away because none of the leader except one, that is Ambedkar, actually talked about annihilation of caste. Everybody wanted to reform the caste system but never talked about removal of caste system. Ek Ambedkar hai, post independence was another Lohia. He talks about caste system should be eliminated or annihilated. So we'll see Lohia's perspective on caste when we'll be talking about paper 2. But none of the leaders other than these two people, Ambedkar and Lohia, wanted to end the caste system. Ek South mein bhi hue, and they were he was Periyar. Okay, T.V. Ramaswamy Naikar. So he was the one who actually, but he never talked about annihilation of caste, but he wanted that untouchability and all this stuff should go away. And he was anti-Brahmin mostly, but never talked about ending this system. And that's why this system, the ground was already prepared before independence also, that if the democracy comes, it definitely is going to be religion-based and caste-based. Because Britishers already, the reservation policies and all that stuff, that was already started. Remember that first round conference, round table conference, second and third round table conferences, in which this separate electorates has to be discussed. अब वहाँ पे separate electorates में the major issue that was to be discussed was कि caste-based reservations should be given or not. And that actually created the fertile ground. Several caste associations were already formed, who will be kind of lobbying the government for some special provisions for their caste. So definitely उसके बाद the ground was prepared, and post independence what we see is, and that was actually after emergency, that is 1977. So the politicization of caste and casteization of politics actually happened. Rise of Janata Party and fragmentation of Janata Party into various caste-based political parties. Bahujan Samaj Party, Samajwadi Party, RLD, JDU, and Maharashtra Wali. Okay, so this is the idea of Max Weber Trinitarian model. कास्ट को सोसाइटी का पार्ट ही माना जाएगा, कभी कास्ट सोसाइटी के इक्वल कैसे हो जाएगी? हाँ, कल्चर सोसाइटी के इक्वल? यार ये सवाल आपको इतने दिन बाद तो नहीं पूछना चाहिए था. Culture is not distinct from society. Culture is something how a society lives. It's a way of life. तो सोसाइटी से अलग नहीं है, बस सोसाइटी वही है. जैसे आप अगर सोसाइटी हो तो आप लोगों का कल्चर सेम होगा. That's why you are called a society. यही तो डिफरेंस है कि सोसाइटी इज अ ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल विद अ शेयर्ड वे ऑफ लाइफ, एंड दैट शेयर्ड वे ऑफ लाइफ इज कल्चर. सोसाइटी और सिविलाइजेशन में तो वही वाली बात है कि सोसाइटी कैन हैव सिविलाइजेशन. ओके, सोसाइटी कैन हैव अ civilization, not always, but अब जैसे हमारी सोसाइटी में सिविलाइजेशन है, but there can be a society, simple society wherein there will not be a civilization. The culture of them is not that progressive enough to have a civilization. Anything else? So just write Weber's idea. Max Weber proposed a Trinitarian model of stratification. Max Weber proposed a Trinitarian model of stratification against economic determinism of Karl Marx. He highlighted three bases of stratification. First, class. It refers to person's economic position in a society. It refers to person's economic position in a society based on birth, or individual's achievement. It is one of the factor. But not the supreme factor. Second, status. It refers to a person's prestige, social honor or popularity in a society. Weber noted that person's position was not rooted solely in capital value, but also in one's individual status. Third, power. Refers to person's capability to execute their will despite resistance. Okay. Next point. Weber was against polarization of classes. Weber was against polarization of classes. He suggested that the society will divide into 4 classes. Society will divide into 4 classes. That is, these 4 classes: bourgeois, white collared, petty bourgeois, and manual laborers. Okay. So this is the idea of Weber. Now we'll see the next theory, the last one. Symbolic interactionism. So what is symbolic interactionism? अभी तक जितनी भी theories, the theories that we have seen till now are macro level theories. That is talking about stratification at the macro level, societal level. Okay, now this theory talks about stratification at micro level. That is how stratification expresses itself at the individual level. Means, okay, stratification is there maybe because of your wealth, maybe because of your functional importance, maybe because of your class, status, or power, whatever it is. But if I am placed at top of hierarchy as compared to some other person here, how this factor actually is expressed? How will I express my position or power? And how the stratification actually shapes up individuals' interaction with others. This is what symbolic interactionism talks about. Okay, that even if I am powerful, even if I am at top of hierarchy, what will I do just in order to show my status? क्या करूंगा? किस तरीके से अपना power या hierarchy दिखाने की कोशिश करूं? So it says that usually the people with whom we interact belong to the same social standing. Usually means majority of the people around me or my group will usually be the people of the same social standing or people having the same hierarchical rank. So if you think of your friends mainly, so you will find that majority of them or almost all of them are more or less in the similar categories of rank. And don't think of rank simply on the basis of economy. क्या हो सकता है that you might be a bit more rich than your friend's family, but there might be something else that might be supplementing or kind of will be more with your friend. So think in Trinitarian perspective, and you will find that maybe college में बढ़िया है, intelligent है, although might be of a poor family. That's why he's your friend. So most of our friends or most of our group are the ones, according to this theory, who have the same social standing. This is what symbolic interactionism says. And the language, the way we interact with others, that actually displays our social standing with respect to the other person. So if you are talking to a person who is of almost equal value or equal status, the language will be different. Talking to a person who is almost kind of थोड़ा सा inferior है या काफी inferior position पे inferior, that doesn't mean मतलब low in the hierarchical position, or then your language will be different, and high in the hierarchical position, language will be completely different. So this says, moreover, this symbolic interactionism talks about how we think of others basically, and what are the factors that we think. So if you see somebody, suppose you will be in an administrative job, you will be sitting in an office, IAS officer बनके, and a particular person enters into your room, means this big your office will be, and definitely he gets at least 10-15 seconds to reach to you. And in that 10-15 seconds, just by a glance or two, you will try to judge the status of that person. And based on which, you will actually decide the way you want to talk to that person. You basically think of that person's status. You will definitely think. Not just that, wherever you go, you also think what other people are thinking about your status. So suppose you buy a shirt, maybe from say Gafar market. If you might not be aware, say कि आपने सरोजनी से कपड़े खरीदे हुए, and that Sarojini, you know that यहाँ पे 200-250 रुपए में आराम से you get any kind of brands. So you means it was your first time you bought it, and you will be conscious the moment you wear it and come into the class. You will be conscious that what other people might be thinking, even if the other people do not bother or they do not even care what you are wearing, but you still are conscious that what other people might be thinking. And if somebody points at you, you will think that definitely he is pointing at my shirt. ऐसा ही होगा. So this theory says that we consume certain objects to display our status, and that consumption is what is called as conspicuous consumption. So he says that every form of consumption that we do is conspicuous in nature, not just to satisfy our need, but also to display our status to the fellow human beings. So आपके पास जैसे पैसा बनना शुरू हो जाता है, तो automatically the brands that you prefer will automatically change. It's not that the earlier brand was bad or new brand might be qualitatively good, but it's just that you want to convey your status. So earlier you might be eating Ashirwad atta, and then you might basically move to some vegan कोई या organic आटा वगैरह पे आप चले जाओगे. Although you might not be able to find any difference in the taste also or in the quality also, but still, since you have more money to spare, you will be engaging into conspicuous consumption. This is what this theory says, and it says that every object works as a sign vehicle. That is, आपका status display कर रहा है लोगों को. It's a symbol. It's a message to the outside world that देख भाई मेरे पास इतना पैसा है और या फिर मेरा status ये है. Okay, so this is what symbolic interactionism talks about. Talking about stratification at the micro level, at the level of individual, and that will show actually that interaction with the individual shows that where an individual considers himself or herself in that particular society. What's आप अपने बारे में किस rank पे आप अपने आप को सोच रहे हो? This is what the symbolic interactionism talks about. Okay, so if you are feeling like I'm on top of the world, means in senses. So if you're feeling like this, then it means that you have a lot of factors behind you, maybe money, maybe political power, or maybe some kind of some prestige, something कुछ तो किया होगा जिंदगी में. So that's why you are feeling that okay, I am in the local hierarchy or wherever I'm interacting, I am over and above them. So this thing will happen. I'm telling you, when you basically being an IAS officer, आप कभी अपने किसी subordinate की शादी में जाओगे, especially if that subordinate is too low in the hierarchical rank. Say maybe आपके ऑफिस में कोई चपरासी होगा, कोई पीएन होगा, और maybe अगर आप आईपीएस बन जाते हो तो कोई हवलदार वगैरह की पोजीशन पे होगा, and you basically get the chance to visit, maybe उसके बेटी की शादी हो, बेटे की शादी हो, बूढ़ा है, आपका पर्सनल ड्राइवर है, सपोज करो, and उनके घर में शादी है या कोई फंक्शन है, whatever, and you get a chance to attend that function. So then you will understand, means that is symbolic interactionism, that you can clearly depict the person like IAS. आप जैसे वहां पे जाओगे तो you will see the entire family will leave everyone, even दूल्हे को छोड़ देंगे, और वो आपके आसपास आ जाएंगे, सर को परेशानी नहीं होनी चाहिए. They will bring everything to you, they will do anything just to please you. Okay, and you will basically kind of start feeling like थोड़ा सा conscious, ये सब मेरे को घेर के खड़े हो गए. This is something the symbolic interactionism that is at work. That is these people, they believe that they are comparatively very low in hierarchy. For them, it's the biggest gift. That person of such hierarchy is visiting their place to attend their son's or daughter's wedding, and this is how their behavior is actually displaying their position in the hierarchy. Okay, at the individual level, not at the macro level की बात नहीं कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे. individual कैसे behave करेंगे, that is symbolic interactionism. Okay, is it clear? Just write then. Symbolic interactionism examines stratification from a micro level perspective. Examines stratification from a micro level perspective. This analysis strives to explain how people's social standing affects their everyday interactions. In most communities, people interact primarily with others who share the same social standing. It is precisely because of social stratification that people tend to live, work and associate with others like themselves. The built-in system of social stratification groups people together. Next point. What class a person belongs to depends not on how much he earns or he or she earns, but how other people can tell the class of that person. For this, people engage in conspicuous consumption. The product we buy makes statement about our social position. The tastes are specified by the social position. These objects act as sign vehicles. Next point. Symbolic interactionists also note that people's appearance reflects their perceived social standing. They analyze how individuals think of themselves or others' interpretation of themselves. Okay? We'll study the symbolic interactionism in more detail in the same chapter, maybe tomorrow. So I gave you that statement. Remember, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I'm what I think you think I am. So this is a clear-cut case of symbolic interactionism. So basically, my perception of myself, my status, is not what I think of myself. It's not what you think of me, but it's exactly what I think you think of me. So आप मेरे को किस तरीके से देख रहे हो, वो बार-बार whenever I'm talking to you, whenever I'm interacting with you, in symbolic interactionism के perspective से, I am always judging or I am always calculating what you are thinking of me, based on which my actions or reactions will depend. That is symbolic interactionism. Okay. So throughout our socialization, we engage in such kind of process, and based on which we will be we are socialized like this. कि हम लोग हमेशा सोच रहे होते हैं. So I'll talk about all this socialization and all that stuff. Now we'll see gender-based stratification. So 4 major types of stratification are supposed to be read. 2 we will be reading here. That is gender and ethnicity. Then 2, that is race, we'll be reading in physical anthropology, wherein you have to understand race as a biological concept first, and then we'll be able to understand this. And next one is caste. So that's a full-fledged topic in paper 2. So we'll be reading caste in paper 2. Okay. So अभी यहाँ पे gender और ethnicity we'll be reading. Now, as we all know that there is a scholar, Naila Kabir, who says biology is gendered as well as sexed. So she begins this idea saying that the human biology also is gendered as well as sex. That means that we associate some biological features with some particular sex only. Okay, so when I say that dole shole bane hue hain, so what you are imagining is definitely a kind of a male, जिसकी height अच्छी खासी होगी, and he is a bodybuilder with six-pack abs. Okay, and when I see a beautiful person with like beautiful eyes, okay, say person with beautiful eyes, so definitely the first thought that comes to our mind is a female. So here, what has actually associated eyes or beautiful eyes with a female and say biceps with a male? It's our perception, it's our socialization only. That is, some traits they are, or biological traits, they are associated with a particular sex, on the basis of which she is saying that biology is gendered as well as sexed. Okay, so now everything that you see in a society where there is a gender-based stratification, so everything that you will see has some kind of gender. So when I say that somebody is drinking whiskey on the rocks, so then you again come to the one thing that comes to your mind is male hi hoga. When I say somebody is drinking red wine, so all this socialization has been made very clear in our mind. You will never imagine when I say that somebody is drinking red wine, so never imagining a male having red wine glass in his hand. It always will be a female. Okay, maybe आपने Hollywood movies वगैरह में देखा होगा, and they actually create these gender stereotypes. They reinforce these gender stereotypes. Okay, regularly. So gender-based stratification is very common, or almost universal in, and these gender-based stratification is based on this. Naila Kabir says that based on stereotypes that are created through socialization, and that socialization starts from home, then moves through media, school, and every other places where we are socialized. So ये जो norms है, जो stereotypes हैं, they are reinforced there. So, so this actually what we say that our socialization, what Naila Kabir would say, we are not socialized or we are not enculturated, but we are gendered. That means throughout our enculturation, we are taught how, as a particular sex, we are supposed to behave. That is, gendering should be the right term rather than enculturation. Because male will be taught कि तुम्हें strong बनना है, female would be taught तेज मत बोलो. Okay, speak softly, don't shout. And exactly this enculturation is nothing but the gendering. Okay, even in caste also, when we are taught the caste values, so gendering is something that is automatically done with caste or with religion or whatever we do. This is what scholars are saying, and the patriarchal societies carefully cultivate these kind of values. So here, there is a scholar named Raven Connell, who says that in patriarchal society, what male or what we see is what is called as hegemonic masculinity. Hegemony का आपको मतलब पता है कि that is dominance, and masculinity will be considered as a dominant trait. Okay, so this hegemonic masculinity is reinforced by family, by action movies, okay, or by advertisement. So you must have seen that advertisement of Wildstone deodorant and Axe. So how basically they project or commodify women, that some random guy with six-pack abs comes and takes that deodorant and he's able to attract a lot of women around him. So this is what is hegemonic masculinity. Okay, and that is reinforced, and something we don't take it seriously, we don't take it, but what actually it's doing is it is imposing, or it is actually commodifying women, and not just commodifying women, it is actually reinforcing the patriarchy in the society. Okay, something which we usually accept because we have been socialized like this from childhood days, and we feel that इसमें क्या बड़ी बात है? It's normal. Okay, and this is not the thing that first time when you would have seen this advertisement, or first time when you would have seen that movie जहाँ पे actor comes and there is a six-pack abs, you all boys and girls both have their rules. Like हाँ बढ़िया है, लड़कों को ये हुआ कि हाँ six-pack abs बनाने हैं because that is necessary to have a girlfriend, and girls do have that imagination कि उनके boyfriend के six-pack abs होने चाहिए. So this is hegemonic masculinity. Okay, and due to which the inferiority means means what is actually happening. These kind of traits, that is masculine traits, they are shown to be superior. ये है तो definitely you are a masculine person. This जो macho man वाली जो feeling है, this tag. So what actually happens due to this is what is called as patriarchal dividend. Dividend का मतलब क्या होता है? That is some dividend is the term that is used that company earns some kind of profit and it will be sharing that money with the shareholders. So that's a dividend. Here in patriarchal dividend, a man, or just by virtue of being a man, just by virtue of being born as a male, gets certain advantages in the society. क्या बस मेल पैदा हुए, आपने कुछ किया नहीं है, but still you are getting some kind of advantage, and that starts in your household itself. That is in terms of education. So if in case the father can afford education of one child and he has a boy and a girl, so who will be educated or who will be preferred? Definitely the boy. Okay, and more freedom. So girls will be restricted more, that you should be inside the house before sunsets, but no question on boys being outside the house. This is the patriarchal dividend that comes due to hegemonic masculinity. Okay, and not just this, but Raven Connell says that this patriarchy brings not just hegemonic masculinity, but what is called as emphasized femininity also. That it creates a ideal woman idea, that an ideal desirable woman should have these kind of traits. So through media, you are basically shown how an ideal girlfriend or wife should be, or a mother should be. So movies आपको बार-बार दिखाई जाती हैं. Okay, so nobody, so in those movies you will see that how sacrificing a mother is, and you believe that mother should always be the one who should be sacrificing. You are shown that how a girlfriend is, okay, or how what features. Means आपने कई सारी movies में देखा होगा that how a particular boy falls in love with a particular girl, and there are some basic traits you can just count on it. कि वो लड़का अचानक से जा रहा होगा and that girl will be playing with small kids. Yes or no? Or maybe playing with balloons, or maybe helping a blind man or woman to cross the road, isn't it? So that is how an ideal woman should be. अब आपने वहां पे कभी ऐसा नहीं देखा होगा कि एक लड़की जो है बेसिकली शी इज एक्चुअली सेलिंग ड्रग्स, लेकिन और हैविंग अ गन एंड शूटिंग पीपल, एंड जिसके बाद लड़का उससे इंप्रेस हो गया, इसी से शादी करेंगे. नेवर. हाँ, लेकिन व्हाट एक्चुअली इज हैपनिंग कि फीमेल विल गेट इंप्रेस जब boy comes and he beats like 10 बार window को मार देगा और वो impress हो जाएगी. So this is emphasize femininity. That in order to be desirable, you should have these kind of qualities, and that's what happens. That women start cultivating these kind of qualities from the very first day. In fact, our socialization actually tends to cultivate these value systems. This is what Reverend Connell says. The three major terms: hegemonic masculinity, patriarchal dividend, and emphasize femininity. Now, even when you say that जिसकी वजह से what actually happens is कि the women representation in jobs, in administration, in power, all such kind of things, they basically gets reduced. So what actually happens? That women usually end up into, even when we talk about jobs or economic empowerment of women, it is said that women usually end up getting what is called as pink collar jobs. So when I say a receptionist, so what comes to your mind? Definitely a female. Okay. When I say a nurse, what comes to your mind? Definitely a female. But this nurse is a very sex neutral term. Okay, it's a gender neutral term. इसका कहीं से मतलब मेल या फीमेल नहीं है. But when I say that nurse, automatically a female comes to your mind. And when I say receptionist, it automatically is a female. Why? Because they are supposed to do the same kind of job in the company also, which they are doing at home. Same value system is required here. That is hospitality होनी चाहिए, care, warm, love, affectionate. The same value system which is required at house or for household work, the same value system is required in these kind of jobs as well. So this is what is called as that in these jobs they are doing a second shift. Shift आप समझते हो that factories जब चलती हैं तो there are shifts. So तीन shift में so 24 hours the factories will be running. So first shift will be maybe 6 to 2 and then 2 to 10 and then to 6, something like this. तीन shift में. So what women are doing at owners or at, you can say, at company level is doing their second shift of the same job. The first shift is what they are doing at household, and the second shift is what they are doing in the company using the same values. But what we do in the company usually we suppose if there is a lawyer, so lawyer, what kind of value system he uses or what kind of work he does in court or office, he does not do the same at house. Definitely. So घर पे तो अपने कानून नहीं झाड़ेगा. Okay, but here the feminist scholars, they say that women are supposed to use the same value system or the skills which they use at home at their workplace also, and that's why these are called as the second shift. Is it clear? Just like this. Patriarchal societies are maintained through careful cultivation of attitudes, behaviors and systems. Attitude, behaviors and systems that favor men and encourage society to believe one gender is innately better than others. One gender is innately better than others. Societies celebrate and define masculine characters. Reverend Connell calls this as hegemonic masculinity. It's a practice that legitimizes man's dominant position. Fitting into masculinity pays off in the form of societal approval. Okay. In a patriarchal society, all men share patriarchal dividend. That is the benefits to men simply because they are men. Next paragraph. Some characteristics depicts what a woman should look like or behave so that they become desirable. Reverend Connell calls this emphasized femininity. That is, Reverend Connell calls this as emphasized femininity. That is, to make women conform to what is ideal female in men's eyes. Okay. Next paragraph. Even in economy, women are given position in caring roles and men in leadership roles. Women are basically employed in, you can write this, pink collar jobs, single quote, pink collar jobs. ऐसे ये pink collar jobs का idea was, although you don't need to remember this, was given by Louis House. Okay, but ठीक है, women are basically employed in pink collar jobs. ठीक है, so this is a basic idea of how society enforces or kind of inculcates the gender roles. Now, if we see certain theories, gender-based division of labor, the theories related to it. So what are the theories? There are multiple theories in anthropology that talks about what actually led to gender-based division of labor. Okay, the first one, we have almost discussed this. The first one is the strength theory. So strength theory says that a lot of work that is done in the society or that is done by a community, some work requires less amount of strength, and there are certain work that requires a large amount of strength. Physical strength is required. Okay, and not just physical strength, but a certain burst of energy is required in something. So basically, suppose if you're supposed to kind of hold or uplift some heavy material, or maybe push or pull some heavy object, in that case, strength says a certain burst of energy that is required. That is just to bring it in motion, and that heavy burst of energy is possible definitely in men. That has been biologically proven. Because of the larger size of men, they have greater lung size, and since they have greater lung size, they have more air. Their lungs can store more air, and more air, that means more burst of energy, means greater metabolism and greater energy can be released. So that's why this men will be involved in those tasks which require greater strength, and female will be involved in those tasks which do not require physical strength. Okay, but it cannot explain why some men in certain societies they engage in honey collection. Okay, strength theory cannot explain this idea, or they may be engaged into, say, musical instrument making. So this is the first idea of division of labor, just like this strength theory. The greater strength of males, and their superior capacity to mobilize their strength, in quick bursts of energy is the reason for division of labor by gender. Certain activities that require lifting heavy objects, or throwing weapons, or running with great speed, may generally be performed best by males. Next point. But the strength theory cannot explain why male engage in collecting wild honey, or making musical instruments, which do not require much physical strength. Okay. Next theory is compatibility with childcare theory. So all those tasks that takes women away from home, or all those tasks that puts the life of child at risk, or all those tasks which cannot be resumed or paused as one will, so will not be done by women. Matlab, women will be suitable for doing jobs first, which can be started and paused as and when required. Second, should not take women away from home. बहुत दूर तक ना लेके जाए. Okay, and third, should not place the life of child at risk. So these are the tasks that are compatible with childcare, and that should be done by women. That can be stopped or resumed as and when we like. Okay, so suppose for hunting hai. So in that hunting, it will not happen like as if the child starts crying and woman has to breastfeed the child. In that case, she can ask the prey to stop so that she can breastfeed and then come and hunt. It won't happen like this. Or when the child cries, instead of hunting the animal, it might happen that due to child cries, the child might get hunted. Okay, she might lose. So, or if she is going far away from the home, in that case, how can she be near to the child to regularly feed? Okay, so such kind of tasks should not actually be done by women, or all those tasks which are compatible with childcare should be done. Just like this. Only those roles which are compatible with childcare, are performed by women. That is, first, the tasks that do not take them away from homes for long periods. Second, that do not places the children in potential danger. If they are taken along. Or third, that can be stopped and resumed if an infant needs care. Next point. That can be stopped and resumed if an infant needs care. But this theory could not explain why men prepare soil for planting, make objects out of wood, bone or shell. All these tasks can be done by women as they can be stopped and resumed, as they can be stopped or resumed. Okay, लेकिन ये theory की बहुत ज़्यादा importance है in the present time compatible with child care. So you will see, you can explain that the same job which the woman is doing in house, when this jobs get commercialized, it is usually held by a man, because since it is taking women away, far away from home for a long time. That is, woman cooks in the house, but the chef is usually a male. But मतलब समझ लो कि घर पे खाना कौन बना रहा है? Female. But when that job is commercialized, wherein the person has to stay away from home for a long time, so that job will be given to a man. So woman cooks, but man becomes the chef. Okay, woman stitches, but man becomes the tailor. So this is something, the same job, although might be done by women at home, but when commercialized, वो आदमी करेगा, because it is not compatible with child care. ठीक है. Now the third theory, it's simply related to simple societies. We have talked about this expendability theory. That is, men are more expendable than women for the continuity of the group. So if men die, so the group loses, मतलब बहुत कम lose कर रहा है, because the group can still continue. One single man can impregnate all the women. But if woman dies, then the chances of survival of the entire group is at risk, right? So that's why all those tasks that involves risk of life and death will be done by men in order for continuity of that group. That is expendability theory. Just like this. Men rather than women will tend to do dangerous work. Because men are more expendables. And because loss of men is less disadvantageous reproductively than loss of women. Less disadvantageous reproductively than loss of women. Next point. When anyone who does dangerous work which involves risk of death, life and death, the society glorifies those roles. And endows them with high prestige. And other rewards. But now if you see, if this is the case, then women are also entering into army or police force, air force, or they are becoming martial arts fighter, bodyguards. Okay, but still they do not get the same respect as men who engage in the same roles. Okay, अभी तो कोई भी ऐसा job नहीं that is completely male domain or masculine domain. Women have entered into the workforce in these roles as well. But do women get the same respect as men soldier? When I say soldier, definitely a male definitely comes to your mind, not a female. So women engaging into same job but still not getting the same respect of police inspector role. Maybe you usually do not imagine women there. A women will not be given the same respect as men in that position. ठीक है, आप usually आप कभी भी रोड पे चलो, means if a female inspector tries to stop you or tries to argue with you, आपका confidence next level होता है. Okay, आपको लगता है कि definitely इसको beat कर ही देंगे यार argument में, और ये कुछ ज़्यादा कर नहीं पाएगी. But if the same a police inspector male stops you, तो वहाँ पे आप थोड़ा सा you basically walk at a back foot पे काम करके बात करते हो और आप ज़्यादा aggressively बात नहीं करोगे. Okay, so that means the same role when done by men gets greater respect. The same role when performed by the women do not get the same respect. So again, this is the flaw of this theory. Okay, next one. Economy of effort theory, the last one. So it's basically a theory that is to explain the criticism, that is why men engage in hunting, honey collection or making musical instruments and all that stuff. So they say that ki the one who is engaging into any kind of job should be the one who knows most of it. जिसको सबसे ज़्यादा knowledge वही तो वो job करेगा. So it says that since men, they are moving outside the house, they are roaming in the jungles, so they have a greater knowledge of the trees, they have a greater knowledge of the local environment as compared to women because of their greater mobility. So whenever an object has to be made, for example, men will be hunting, so they have greater knowledge of the bone strength, isn't it? So उस bone से कोई tool बनाना है, तो who will be a better person to make it? Who has a greater knowledge of the raw material? And किसको होगा? The one who is engaging into hunting and basically is involved in tearing the meat or removing the meat from the bones. So he has the knowledge which bone is more stronger as compared to the other bones. So he will be the one who will be making any object out of that bones. Okay, and since he is moving in the forest for search of animals, for hunting, for every other things, so he is seeing the trees. He knows the properties of these trees. So if there is any object that has to be made from the wood of that trees, who will be the first choice? Definitely who has the greater knowledge of it. That is the man. So that is what is called as economy of effort. So the one who has the greater knowledge will be getting a greater return on the investment. That is greater return on the investment of efforts. So कम effort में भी उसको ज़्यादा बेहतर रिजल्ट मिलेगा क्योंकि उसकी knowledge ज़्यादा है. And that's why men will be engaging into such kind of tasks because of their greater ability to move freely and greater knowledge of the local environment. So anything that is outside their house will be done by the men. Just like this. Some crafts which are done by men, like making musical instruments from wood objects or bone tools etc. is due to greater knowledge of men about raw materials. Men generally collect these materials by lumbering, that is cutting of trees by lumbering, and since this requires a greater strength, तो ये men ही करेंगे. Because they collect materials, they have greater knowledge about them. ठीक है. Next point है इसी में. It also suggests that this theory also suggests that it would be advantageous for one gender to perform tasks which are located near to each other. Thus, women have to be at home to take care of young ones, and it would be advantageous for them to perform activities situated near or located near home. Okay. So this is the gender division of labor in anthropological theories. Now we will be talking about theories of gender stratification. Okay. The first theory that we'll see is the structure functions theory, that is Parsons theory. Although this question has not yet been asked, that is gender based stratification अब तक तो नहीं पूछा गया है, but they have started exploring the areas that has not yet been asked. Okay, so stratification के ऊपर भी they have never asked. Last 3 years से पहले ज़्यादा क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछे गए थे, but now they have specifically asked functional theory of stratification. Okay, that is Davis Moore hypothesis was directly asked. और इससे पहले there are 3 bases of stratification or different approaches to understand stratification, multiple theories of stratification. So it's like there is a high probability that in future, maybe next year or next year, they might be coming up with a question on gender based stratification. बताओ या फिर ethnic based stratification explain करो. Okay, so and moreover these ideas can be used multiple ways. In multiple ways आप पेपर 1 2 में कहीं ना कहीं आप इनको यूज ही कर पाओगे. At the same time, essay writing and also social issues can also be solved from this knowledge. So Target Parson, he was talking about industrialized society mainly. So he says that in industrial society there will be rise of what he calls as isolated nuclear family. So I might have given you this idea because industrialized society requires a lot of mobility of labor, and mobility is not possible when we talk about joint family. ठीक है, joint family को 20 लोगों के परिवार को एक जगह से नोएडा to Bangalore and Bangalore to Noida and then to Hyderabad से move कराना is difficult, right? So that's why what actually happens is when as the society gets industrialized, there will be a rise of nuclear families, and when nuclear families rise and due to industrialization, family loses majority of its function, which Target Parson says family becomes macroscopically functionless. Majority of the function that was earlier done by the family in industrial society, there will be rise of certain private institutions that will be doing the same kind of functions which were earlier done by the joint family. So child care will be taken by crèche because husband and wife both have to work. So old age homes will come up. You don't have to take care of the old ones because you don't have the time. So आप देखोगे कि old age homes, the numbers in the metropolitan cities are greater than the old age homes, or there is no concept of old age homes in tier 2, tier 3 cities or rural areas, right? But it's a common idea in metropolitan cities, right? So even the people who are very rich would prefer their parents to go to old age homes. They will pay a hefty amount of money to shift them to old age homes. Why? Because they do not have the time here. We'll talk about this when we'll be covering unit 2.4, that is family. But this is something that will happen due to industrialization. So rise of isolated nuclear family that will be more or less functionless. But he says that there will be 2 irreducible functions that the family will have, and that 2 irreducible functions are: first, socialization of young. Okay, that will be the first function, to socialize the young ones, and second, stabilization of adult personality. This will be the 2 functions that will be performed by the family. Here he says that for the family to be successful, they require a set of people with complementary skill sets, isn't it? अगर ये group of people means एक तो small family है, husband, wife, 2 children. So in that case, if there are people who are doing the same task, both are earning money, or both are basically taking care of the child, then there is a problem. So for a family to be successful, it requires people with complementary skill set. So अगर कोई एक earn कर रहा है, the other one will be taking care of the household. So in this case, these 2 functions of the family can be provided only by the woman, as per Target Parson, because it requires a warm environment, warm and cozy environment, socialization of young and stabilization of adult personality. So it will be performed only by women only, because since young one ka care, since she has given birth to the child, she can provide that warm environment to the child. Okay, and that's why women will be socializing, or women will be playing a most important role in socialization of the young. And now second thing, when woman is doing this, she does not have to do this function also. She has to make sure that when the breadwinner of the family comes from the office, so what actually has happened, he might be frustrated. Boss से लड़ाई हो गई, किसी ने सुना दिया होगा. He might not have got the credit for whatever contribution he has made to the company, due to which he might have got frustrated. जिसकी वजह से he might take some kind of extreme steps. Okay, so he also needs a warm environment so that his personality is stabilized, so that he gets up again in the morning and goes to the office for the work, despite having any kind of frustration. So that work will also be done by women. Now, he says that when woman is doing these work, or specifically when woman is socializing the young, so she has the responsibility to prepare the young for the future roles that they have to perform, isn't it? So here women will be training the young, that is the boys will be given instrumental values, that is the values to be self dependent. Instrumental का मतलब होता है that means that can be used to earn something. So those instrumental values, that is to become self dependent, to become competitive, to act like leader, dominant, aggressive, these kind of values will be inculcated in the boys. Since the girls have to later on do the same kind of work that a woman is doing, so she will be inculcated with what Parsons calls that expressive values. Okay, loving, caring, warmth, okay, hospitable. So such kind of values will be inculcated in the girls. So this is how the gender roles are created in the family itself. Why? Because for such a function is. So he's saying that this is normal, this is okay. Why? Because by this gendering only, the family is becoming stable and industrialization will be successful. Because of the complementary skill sets that the male and female will possess, जिसकी वजह से industries को labor भी मिलते रहेंगे and family will be stable, everything will be stabilized and new set of labor will be reduced. The new girls, that is who have to perform the role of women in future, will also be trained. So this is how basically gendering is going to happen, or gendering happens in an industrial society. Okay, just write this. Target Parsons. Target Parsons saw isolated nuclear family in modern industrial society. Isolated nuclear family in modern industrial society as specializing in two basic functions. First, socialization of young. Second, stabilization of adult personalities. For socialization to be effective, a close, warm, and supportive group is essential. A close, warm, and supportive group is essential. Boys and girls are socialized to take traits complementary to each other to make it easier to maintain stable productive family units. Next point, boys are taught instrumental values or instrumental qualities to prepare them for labor force. Okay. Second, women are taught expressive values or qualities to provide warmth, security, and emotional support. Okay. Last line. Society encourages gender conformity. That is, sorry, in order to be desirable, one has to follow the norms. Okay. So this is an extension of value consensus theory of Target Parsons that is based on gender level. The value consensus this is the value consensus that boys should have this instrumental values and girls should have expressive values. And you will be respected only if you conform to this value consensus of having expressive or instrumental values. And if you deviate, the society will coerce you or you will not become desirable. Now, there is another scholar who talks about social construction of gender roles and Oakley. Here in this case, social construction of gender roles and Oakley. So here she talks about that how socialization shapes our behavior or how socialization shapes our gender personality. Okay, she's not the first one. Margaret Mead has already talked about it, sex and temperament in 3 primitive societies. Remember? So here also she says that socialization of a child actually shapes the gender behavior, and how the first is child's concept of self is manipulated. It's kind of affected by manipulation of the parents. So parents from the very first day when the child is born or when the child starts, so they will take care of when she is a girl. So cleanliness will be taken care. Good shiny clothes of specific colors will be taken for her. Okay, and if she basically throws something on the dress or kind of spoils her dress, in that case immediately it will be changed. Much focus on her hairstyle will be given. So different new types of hairstyle will be made. But in the same case, boys. Okay, so ganda ho gaya, phata pehna hai, kuch pehna hai. Means if a girl falls, she injures herself or gets a cut mark, so immediately everybody will run. And if a boy falls, kuch gir gira ke aaya to thapad pehle aur mare. Welcome Hamad. Okay, that is the concept of self is manipulated or affected by how we are being treated. Second is through canalization. The idea of self will be changed by canalization. Canalization means exposure to different kind of objects. The kind of objects that will be given to boys for playing cricket bat or guns or something like this, video games, and girls will be given Barbie doll. Okay, your doctor set, kitchen set, all this will be given, and due to this, the canalization happens and different kind of gender personality starts to develop. The third one will be through verbal application. So the kind of language that will be used. So the parents, they refrain from using any abusive language in front of girls, but they do not have such kind of restrictions in front of boys. In fact, boys को सुना भी देते हैं. Okay, so they do not have any kind of restriction, and due to this, again, we also have the same restriction. I am telling you that you have to accept that we are gender conformist. इसको आपको accept करना पड़ेगा only. The first step to solve the problem is to accept that there exists one. So आप लोग basically boys specifically, we boys basically, we don't have any hesitation in using slangs or abusive words when we are in company of males. But supposedly, if one girl enters into that group and she starts using the same language, we all start feeling like कुछ तो मतलब like गड़बड़ चल रहा है, असहज हो जाते हैं. Yes. So this is through the verbal application our socialization has been done. So we feel like it's a हमारा fundamental right है गालियाँ देना. But we immediately feel uncomfortable when the girl uses the same language. Okay, and the last one is exposed to different kind of activities. Activities as if the boys will be asked to, the parents are to saman tum uthao, and girls will be asked to bring a glass of water or prepare a cup of tea. Okay, so such is the thing. Means ladkiyon ko means if the room is dirty, so usually your sister will be asked to clean the room or set up the room. Normally the boys are not asked to do that. So this is how the patriarchal gendering actually happens, or we are socialized to it. Just like this, Anne Oakley. Social construction of gender roles. Anne Oakley talks about how socialization shapes behavior. How socialization shapes behavior. She discusses four main ways through which socialization takes place. First, the child's self-concept is affected by manipulation. Second, differences are achieved by canalization. In bracket, you can write exposure to different objects. Differences are achieved through canalization. In bracket, exposed to different objects. Third, use of verbal application. And last, exposed to different activities. So next one is how Marxist or Marxist feminist basically view gender-based stratification or explain gender-based stratification. So what Marxist would say कि stratification का reason क्या है? One who owns the means of production, he will be the or that person will be holding superior authority over the ones who are not owning the bourgeois and the proletariat. So Marxist or Marxist feminists say that this gender-based stratification is a mechanism that has been created by the capitalist class to support capitalism or to support or maintain status quo. अब ये कैसे? So they say that this family first, they also criticize family also, that this family is an institution that would maintain status quo because it would take away the bargaining power of the labor, or it will basically refrain or prevent any kind of revolution that can be done by the labor. कैसे? If you have a family, कितने दिन तक strike पे बैठोगे? Isn't it? You have to feed the family, you have to pay the fee of your child. So how many days you can live without work? So that bargaining power of the labor is gone. As a single individual, I can struggle. Okay, but how can I see my family struggling with me? In that case, whatever my employer is giving me, I have to accept it because I have a family to support. I have to pay for the fee of my child. सही time पे फीस जमा करने तो स्कूल से बाहर निकाल दिया जाएगा. Or there are other expenses that I have to bear. I cannot make my entire family suffer because of me. So that family actually will make the labor's resolve weaker. Are you getting this idea? In this case, Marxist feminists would say that this gender division of labor actually also supports capitalism because these capitalists are getting the service of two labors at the cost of one. So there is a labor who is working at home who will not be getting a single penny. But वो labor किस लिए काम करेगी? To make the existing labor fit so that he should go to work every day on time. She prepares the food for him. She prepares or she takes care of the health of that labor so that he is always on time in the factory. So that means both the labors are working so that the factory runs. Without this labor who is working at home, the factory cannot run because the labor working in the factory will not be well or will be late because if he has to prepare food for himself. So in that case, capital system might get और या फिर आपको ज़्यादा पैसा देना पड़ेगा. This is the one service that they are getting for free for which there is no money being paid to the second labor who is working at home. Okay. And second thing, this gender-based stratification, he says that Marxists would say that this basically stabilizes capitalism because they're not just keeping the existing labor safe and fit, but also producing new labors. They have got the responsibility to prepare the new labors, not just produce them, but also socialize them to become future labors. Remember this instrumental values that has to be inculcated into boys. So what they are doing is they are preparing the labors of the future, who will be then working in the factory. So they are training the labors for which they will be getting no money. अब उन labors को train करने के लिए, if the factory would have to pay, it would be in loss, right? But they train, our parents or specifically the mothers train the labors for what? कि बेटा बड़े होकर बढ़िया नौकरी करनी है. So we will be going to some capitalist, some industrial class, and taking a job for the training of which has been paid or the entire expense has been borne by the family members. Capitalists are not paying anything for it, but capitalists will be reaping benefits out of it. Okay, so this is what Marxist feminists or Marxists would say, that this gender-based stratification exists in order to maintain status quo. Okay, just like this. अच्छा एक चीज और भी थी, sorry. Second, the capitalist also, Marxist feminists also say that the capitalists, they view women as a reserve army of labor who can be called when there is a shortage of labor in the market. मतलब called and fired as and when there is a demand, hire and fire at will. So they are reserve army of labor. कि जरूरत पड़ने पे इनको कॉल किया जाएगा. They usually male will be hired, but as and when there is a shortage of labor, we will be calling this. So जो हम हमारे लिए काम तो करेंगे but at a relatively lower price or lower wage, and that explains the wage gap. The same position held by man and women, the woman gets approximately 30 to 35% less salary as the man holding the same position. Okay, just like this. Marxist and Marxist feminist see capitalism as the principal source of women's oppression, and capitalists as the main beneficiary, Women are unpaid laborers who prepare the existing men, or who prepare the existing labor and keeps them fit. They also reproduce and condition new laborers. Capitalists consider women as reserve army of labor. Capitalists consider women as reserve army of labor who can be called upon to facilitate unskilled clerical work, or in period of acute labor shortage, The next one is radical feminist theory. Okay, there are a lot of other theories also that we'll see tomorrow. This is the last we are seeing right now. Don't worry, these all theories will not come together, but your perspectives can help you a lot of times. Okay, so just understand this radical feminist theory. So they say it's not the capitalism that is responsible for oppression of women, but it's the family that is responsible for oppression of women. And radical feminists, they say that the first form of stratification was gender stratification, and that started in the family itself. And all other stratification are a repercussion of gender stratification that started in the family. So सबसे पहला hierarchy was developed in family only, and all other hierarchies in the world are a result of that gender hierarchy that developed in the family. Okay, and how this came, or how this hierarchy actually developed. So there is a feminist named Shulla Smith Firestone. She says that, or she gives the idea of the biological family, the term the biological family, in which she says female's biology to be responsible for her oppression. Okay, it's the female's biology that is responsible for her lower status or lower hierarchy. How? She says that in the family, due to female's biology, she is dependent on male. So why? So she says that there are certain events in female's life where she cannot work, she cannot earn for herself. That is during menstruation. Okay, and the biggest hurdle is pregnancy and delivery of child. This is the biggest biological obstacle for female dependence on male. And since at this point of time when female cannot work, so she is dependent on male. And this later on, what actually she says that that the child requires a long time of care. Infant is dependent on the mother for a longer time. She has to feed the child at least for 1-2 years till the time anybody can take care of the child. In that case, again, she cannot go to work. So that creates a longer dependency of female on male. And due to this longer dependency of female on male, this creates a superiority complex in the mindset of male. That I am feeding her, I am taking care of her. So this superiority complex is the reason for gender stratification. And the major reason for it is the biology of female. So if biology ऐसी नहीं होती, then she would not have been dependent on male. So that's why the radical feminists, they support some radical ideas. So they are high supporters of contraception. They are even very aggressive supporter of artificial womb. They even support surrogacy. They say that a working woman should not get self-impregnated, rather she should rent a womb. Why? Because that surrogacy is also a work that the woman is doing, and she's being paid for it. Okay, so वो ज़्यादा सही है rather than using your own womb to reproduce and get dependent on the man. आप काम करो, rent a womb. Okay, if you want to reproduce. And contraception, and also some artificial womb, that is a concept idea right now, that maybe in future, maybe 10-15 years, there are some ideas that there are some development also that artificial womb, that in vitro fertilization will happen. That is, in vitro means outside the body, sperm and ova would fuse or zygote will be created, and there can be an artificial womb, a machines kind of thing that can completely take care of the zygote and fetus. पूरा वो ध्यान रख सकता है. So that will be a machine that can be hired in that case. So they are supportive of this technological intervention also that will prevent any kind of obstacle that a woman faces while going to work, and that will prevent any kind of dependency of women on men. तो वो इस type के ideas को support करते हैं. And they see family as the biggest villain. अरे ये जो biological family है, that is the biggest villain, or that is the reason for oppression of women. Is it clear? Just like this. The radical feminist blame exploitation of women not on capitalist, exploitation of women not on capitalist, but men and family. Family is the key institution. Family is the key institution that oppresses women. Schuller Smith Firestone calls sexual class as the first form of stratification. According to her, it predated, that is existed before class system, and provided the basis from which other forms of stratification evolved. Next point, biological difference created a form of social organization, the biological family. Point wise, first point, the women are disadvantaged by their biology. Menstruation, childbirth are physical burden that makes them dependent on males for physical survival. Second point, women dependence is increased by long periods during which infants are dependent. Third, this dependence has affected psychology and created superiority complex in male. Next, biological family provides foundation for all types of inequality and stratification. Last line, hence it must be destroyed before any serious progress is to be made towards equality. Okay. So एक दो theories और हैं, we'll be doing it in the next class, and let's discuss some questions. So first question that we'll discuss today is the question that is culture super organic in nature or not? ठीक है, सीधा idea है यहाँ पे, the structure should be define what is super organic, that is it exists over and above the human beings and has a different realm of existence, and there will be different laws that will be controlling it. That is the simple idea. This idea was first given by Herbert Spencer against great men theory. ठीक है, ये आपको मेंशन करना है. Then brought to anthropology by Kroeber. Okay, यहाँ पे दो चीज की बात करनी है, double aspects of human being, that is organic body or organic substance and blank tablet, and genius not due to inherent faculty but socialization. ठीक है, इसको explain करने के लिए we can talk about parallel chains of invention. Then Leslie White, supra biological, and इसमें आपको क्या बताना है, inevitability of invention. सिंपल दो तीन लाइन में यहाँ बस ये कीवर्ड होना चाहिए. ओके, सो दिस इज व्हाट इज सुपर ऑर्गेनिक के सपोर्ट में एविडेंस आपको डालना है. नेक्स्ट, अगेंस्ट वाला आइडिया और क्रिटिसिज्म. फर्स्ट, Alexander Goldenweiser. Okay, in which you can talk about that individual is both concrete and historical mainly, and then second is Edward Sapir. So culture not a unique object. ठीक है, and finally the conclusion that culture impacts but does not determines. ठीक है, this should be a conclusion, impact but not a determinant. लिखिए आप लोगों ने. Okay, next question was related to formalist versus substantivist. So here in this question, simple पहले आप बताओगे कि origin of debate कैसे होती है. That is, anthropologists, in order to study the economy of simple societies, borrowed certain concepts from neoclassical economics. This led to rise of debate whether these concepts or for how long these concepts can be used to study simple societies. One group of scholars said they can be used or they are universally applicable, they were called as formalists. Another group of scholars they said they cannot be used and they are substantivists. Explain each of the side. Formalist, then substantivist, selective criticism and conclusion. ठीक है, directly formally substantive से begin मत करो, just give a background of origin of this debate first. Okay, 30-40 words, not more than that. मतलब आप उस लेवल तक ले आओ कि कैसे दो ग्रुप ऑफ स्कॉलर्स आ गए. ठीक है. Now एक दो क्वेश्चन है which students on online students have asked to discuss. One question is related to configuration of culture or culture configuration का question है, 10 mark. Okay, so here you can begin that idea of culture configuration was given by Kroeber. First time it was given by Kroeber, who defines culture. It's something that I have already discussed. आपकी क्लास में भी कई बार नोट्स में है, anything new content नहीं दे रहा हूं आपको. That who defines culture as non-genetic, shared, anonymous and pattern knowledge. अब अपने नोट्स में एक बार चेक करना, ये डेफिनेशन है. Okay, and इसी definition में configuration के features हैं. That it is a pattern knowledge, and second, it's anonymous in nature. So it's not dependent on the person or individual, but a pattern that exists over and above the individuals. So the cultural knowledge or culture elements, they are arranged into a pattern that create a functional whole. Okay, this is the idea of configuration. So define configuration. If you want, you can write this definition. Just write this. According to Kroeber, configuration are those arrangements. Configuration are those arrangements or systems of internal relationship which give to any culture its coherence or plan and keep it from being a mere accumulation of random bits. ये भी आप लोगों के अमेरिकन स्कूल ऑफ डिफ्यूजनिज्म में मैंने डिक्टेट कराया हुआ है, this same definition. Okay, now next line, configurations are produced by historical experiences. A culture is conditioned by its own accumulative past. ठीक है. Now later this idea was taken by Ruth Benedict. So that was explained by her in her book Patterns of Culture, and she actually fills the gap that was given by Kroeber, saying that Kroeber did not explain what's the reason for this coherence, and she explained it's the special genius that would bring integration among the existing elements of the culture, and that will be idea of special genius, Apollonian and Dionysian. अब 10 मार्क है तो you don't have the scope to explain all the three societies, so you can just give a brief one liner. The Apollonian genius in say Arpesh, right? कौन सी थी वो Apollonian genius? Arpesh? नहीं, Zuni, sorry, yes. So Zuni, Apollonian genius in Zuni was responsible for or was visible in all the cultural characteristics, while Dionysian genius in Dobus was visible in all the cultural elements. Simple, sir. So idea of special genius, and then one or two criticism, and finally the conclusion. So conclusion, you can write this कि configuration का क्या हो सकता है. Simple सा conclusion. It promoted the idea of culture as superorganic and super individual in nature. It also helped predict the behavior pattern of culture. That is what will be the direction of social change. Okay, next one question is वो previous year 2015 का question है, that was given in the group. How do you relate the concept of sacred and profane in Durkheim's theory of religion with a focus on role of totem? So here in this question, first you have to explain. ये question भी dictate करा दूं, लिख लो यार, question भी लिख लो. How do you relate the concept of sacred and profane in Durkheim's theory of religion with a focus on role of totem? Simple idea है, begin with definition of religion by Durkheim, and then bring in the idea of sacred and profane, which Durkheim says that religion leads to dichotomization. Okay, and this dichotomization leads to rise of sacred and profane. So we dichotomize things into sacred and profane, and what is sacred? That is things around which a moral community exists. And I have talked about this, कि sacred is tangible representation of intangible thoughts. Okay, and now how this idea of sacred is related to role of totem. So Durkheim studied Arunta tribes, and in Arunta tribes he found that the society is divided into multiple clans, and each clan has its own totem, and by several mythologies and all, they trace their origin from this totem. So he says that the origin of totem origin of sacred is totem itself. Totem ही origin of sacred है. This is how how totem became sacred, or how totem is worshipped by all. It's because there is a moral community around this particular animal or plant, and by worshipping the totem, they are not worshipping this object per se, but they are worshipping the group to which they originally belong. That is society worshipping itself only. So he would say that totemism was the first form of sacred, means something around which a moral community would have been created, because it's the religion that is present in the most primitive form of society, and उसको लगता है शायद इससे primitive कोई religion हुआ ही नहीं होगा. So totem would have been the first form of, or the first type of sacred, जिसके around एक moral community create हो गई. So this is how, by using the idea of sacred and profane, he explains totem. So आप ये वाला टोटम वाला पार्ट एक शॉर्ट नोट लिख लो, although that is given in your handout origin of sacred वाले में, उसमें एक हेडिंग है origin of sacred in which this is given, just like this. Durkheim saw totemism as one of the earliest and simplest form of religious practice, as one of the earliest and simplest form of religious. Australian Aboriginal society was divided into clans. Each clan had a totem. Which was typically linked to creation myth. That is, every society used to believe that we have been created by this, or we have originated from the totem, which was typically linked to creation myth. To clan members, the totem was a sacred object. The Durkheim's idea is that by worshipping the totem, clan members are actually worshipping the society itself, and thus individuals are reminded that society is more important than individual. ठीक है, last paragraph आप लिख लो. The reason, a concluding paragraph, the reason why humankind needs a totem, to worship rather than literally worshipping the society, is because the clan is too complex, a thing for people to conceptualize. Religious symbols are just simpler entities to worship. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you so much.